Greetings, one and all. Welcome to the penultimate episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast for the year 2020. I am your host, Swiss Guard, and tonight we're pleased to bring you episode number 172, the Gamer Xperience show, wherein we share the joys and pains of our previous 14 days as gamers. I'm also pleased to say that the entire E2KG quartet is here for the final GX show of the year. Welcome, gentlemen. First, we have the one and only Osiris Prime. How are you doing tonight, Prime?
I am doing well, thank you. Good to be back.
DBQ Hams with the Christmas tree in the background.
Yes, I'm glad to be here as well. It's nice to have the gang together.
And finally, Agascles Stamus. How are you doing, Agascles?
I've come to relax much earlier in the show than I used to. Things are a lot more automated now. It used to be like 10, 15 minutes into the show, I was still dorking around getting social media out. So it's a completely different podcast now that I'm like in relax mode like 2 or 3 minutes into the show.
And it only took 4 years. That's great.
Right. We had started way too early. Things were way too manual.
Well, it'll only be a matter of time before Agascles starts trying to optimize the process and see if he can squeeze another couple of seconds out of his workflow. But we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned, 2021. All right. First off, I think we'll just jump right into it. Again, this is the Game Xperience show. We talk about what we've been playing. We've had two of the...
One question, is this our new releases segment?
It is, indeed.
So, give me 1 second. Okay, go right ahead.
Nothing says new releases like little blurb yeah.
Is that what that was? Showing my age there, by the way.
You completely derailed me.
Then it's like another E2KG show. So 5 minutes in and we're derailed. Excellent.
Right. I have enough like confidence problems as your host without Agascles pulling the little rascals out to trip me up. So, Immortals Fenyx Rising was played by not one but two E2KG members on two different platforms, and so we're going to start with DB. You tried it on the a very recent platform, and were you playing it for the game, or were you playing it to give Amazon Luna a spin?
A little bit of both. So I subscribed to Ubisoft Plus this month in order to get Immortals Fenyx Rising and give Valhalla a try and Watch Dogs Legions as well. It works. You know, the Amazon Luna controller connects It connects through Wi-Fi to the server, so it's not connected to any device. The latency there feels really good. I mean, I would say, and maybe I will get into this, Prime. Like, I don't notice playing it through a cloud platform. It is completely playable. The speed is good. I've had some Luna delays with some kind of tighter platform games, but with this, you know, I've been able to get all my parries. I've been able to, you know, all the timing. There doesn't feel to be any lag at all. The graphics look nice. I also tried it on my computer, or at least I loaded it up on my computer to kind of compare. It doesn't look as good as on the computer. On a 2060 card, but even in 1080. But it runs butterly smooth on Luna. There are no load times. You know, it will get to a loading screen, and as soon as the loading screen shows up, it's already moved on to something else. But that's Luna. But the game itself is a ton of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It is by the Odyssey development team, or some of the Odyssey development team, and keeps with that Assassin's Creed Odyssey Greek mythos as you're kind of in mythical islands and fighting a variety of of mythological creatures, and the gods are all there in some capacity. There's a running narration, and you kind of get Zeus and Prometheus are the two. Yeah, thank you. Are the two people that if you've had a chance to play the demo or seen it, that they're kind of running commentary over the top of it all. It's a little tongue in cheek. Some of the reviews out there have kind of slammed it for its sense of humor, not always landing. I don't find it as cringeworthy as Borderlands 3 was, but maybe that's a extreme case. But I'm also not that far in. I've only played a couple hours. So how long have you played it, Prime?
Yeah, probably like 2 or 3 hours, about the same. I'm off the first like level or like section
Okay.
of the islands you go on to. So
Yeah, and it plays. I mean, it is exactly kind of what it appears to be. Is kind of the Assassin's Creed Odyssey crossed with the Breath of the Wild. You have a stamina meter. You get you get wings to be able to glide and do a double jump. Your combat is pretty much right out of Odyssey in terms of heavy and light attacks and bow and parries and dodges. You also get a number of puzzle based elements, ways to interact with the world, but I just find it enjoyable. I was thinking about this. I played both this and Valhalla back to back, and the fact that Immortals is not very serious, it is light and fun, and just gives you lots of opportunities to explore. You can set it up to map things out. So there's lots of things on your map, but it doesn't automatically populate. You kind of have to get up on a tower like you would in Breath of the Wild. But as soon as you hover over something, you can map it, and it stays on your map, and it'll give you the Odyssey aspect of telling you how far away you are. And so that that caused me to kind of just wander off and chase down ambrosia on my map and see if I could climb up or take different routes to try to climb up and beat the stamina meter, which it doesn't always happen. But I'm finding it just a real delight to play. It does not take itself seriously by the narrative. And it also, it has a graphical style that I would think holds up pretty well on Switch. How does it hold up on Switch for you?
yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. It's definitely not like I've seen like the trailers and some of the videos and stuff from like PC and the other consoles, and obviously it doesn't look as clear and kind of crisp as those consoles, but it plays fine. I haven't had any gameplay hiccups or even graphical problems. Everything is pretty stable so far that I've seen. Trying to think if I've gotten to anything that's like real like enemy intensive, and nothing yet. I don't know if that even happens really. Like if there's a lot of enemies on screen at some point, maybe like 5 or 6 at the most. 4 to 6, I should say. But yeah, but it's kept up. I haven't seen any hiccups or anything, and yeah, I mean it looks good even on the Switch. I've played both handheld and on my 4K monitor, and you kind of like other games on the Switch that have been ported over. You kind of have that muted colors on the Switch, so but it's not bad. It still looks pretty good though, as far as I'm concerned.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, August. You can go ahead, August, please.
Well, so first of all, I was going to mention a technical thing. So Prime, I think you're like the classic heist scene on a TV show where they have the video looping on the camera, trying to convince the guards.
Okay. I noticed that. I think it's something with the camera I'm using tonight, so unfortunately that might continue.
No, that's fine. So the thing that's worrisome that feel like I'm hearing is that mechanically they didn't really change their approach and their style. It sounds like what they changed was the narrative, which I felt like, at least from a marketing and an advertising and a messaging standpoint, their whole point was that. I mean, do we feel like that accomplished their objective? That they told a different story? I mean, that's not insignificant, but it seems like they. I almost hate to say put a new coat of paint or put a wrapper on the same mechanic. So if I play this alongside Valhalla, Odyssey, Origins, for somebody who may not latch on to the I'll call it the Disney-esque kind of story presentation, it feels like mechanically there's not going to be a whole ton different.
Well, I would say that, I mean, so far it meets my expectations. You know, I anticipated looking at the combat that it was going to play out similar to Odyssey. I think Odyssey's combat feels different than Valhalla because Valhalla is the Origins team, and those two combat systems were similar, but you know they're not the same, right? In Odyssey, you are a superhero to some degree, and you can kind of barge your way in and keep going. And that is true here as well. Is that you very quickly are powerful, but you also can pretty quickly die because it does do similar things like Breath of the Wild, where you can get some pretty powerful beasts kind of roaming around that are not, you know, you've got to time your parries and your dodges and make sure you have good enough weapons to take them down. So I think if you enjoyed that combat, like if that combat style puts you off, then I don't know that this is going to pull you back in, you know, unless you really love the puzzle aspect of things. But I think it is, to me, it is, given that it's a relatively, you know, it's a 2-year turnaround time from Odyssey, it is a reasonable expectation that they would be building on that. At least it was for me. I don't feel like it is a quick gloss of paint either. Like they've done enough to make it feel distinct. You know, you don't end up, because it has that kind of cartoony feel, like you said. It's not trying to be and replicate a real world place, and so it has the ability to kind of create structures and you know, world building elements to it that Odyssey never really had the option to, because it's not replicating Earth or Atlantis, wherever else Odyssey took us. So that part does give them, to me, it gives them more creative freedom. And so far that feels like it's been playing out. You know, I know from the reviews that each of the different zones, each of the different worlds feels a little different in terms of its environment, and create some different pieces in there as well. So no, I don't feel like it is, you know, I think it is easy for it to get overshadowed because it is a new IP. It doesn't have the kind of name brand panache that the 3 months in a row of, you know, Ubisoft open world games have brought. But it is one where I think it actually potentially will hold up a little better because it is not just simply another one of those. And
Well,
that to me makes it a little different.
Yeah, I was basically going to ask something along the same lines. Was it a cheap facsimile of what's come before with like a fresh coat of paint? And it's nice to hear that there might be a little bit more meat on the bone there for those that appreciate that gameplay style. Real fast, and then you can. You're playing this on Luna, which you said you're kind of just testing out with like a 1 month trial subscription. Is Immortals Fenyx Rising good enough where you want to continue your Luna subscription or get it on another platform, or are you just is it gonna just kind of fade away when your trial expires?
So I'll tell you that today I was looking at prices on Amazon for buying the game itself. To see, you know, earlier this week it was $40. It was 49 something with a $9 coupon, so it was $40 on Amazon. It's back up to $50 now. Yes, I'm definitely interested in sticking with it, or at least coming back to it. And I think it's also, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, it's a game that I set my brother-in-law as well, because he played Breath of the Wild with his kids. And this is a game, other than a few kind of, you know, PG-13 jokes, it is definitely a game that you could play, that, you know, all ages could play, because of the art style, but because it's not very gory. You don't have kind of the, you know, the assassinations to the same effect, and the blood spurts that you would in a Assassin's Creed game. So it, you know, you could call it, you know, baby's first Assassin's Creed. But really it is something that has a little more accessibility to age ranges than I would say the modern versions of Assassin's Creed do.
Well, we'll go from that to the complete opposite. Stay on the mic, DV, and what you were trying CyberPunk 2077, which I don't think anyone would recommend for young children. But you were doing it on the on Stadia, so it's interesting that you're going to be able to compare, I hope, a little bit the experiences. But really, you have some initial impressions for CyberPunk just came out, and what was the release date for that? Was that like today or yesterday?
Last night.
Yesterday.
So yeah, I really only played I played about an hour. I mean, I just kind of started peeling back a little bit here of it. Stadia, it runs great. Reading some things today, it's running better on Stadia. The Stadia equivalent is pretty similar to what Series X and PlayStation 5 are in terms of its performance at this point. It is not the same graphical aspects. Certainly, running it on Stadia still has that kind of, kind of not washed out palette, because the colors look great and kind of pop, but everything is not nearly as defined as it would be. And that's been the case on other Stadia games, and same case on Luna as well, is that things are not as crisp and defined as they would be in a normal 4K. But it runs great, and I think right now, day one of CyberPunk, that is certainly the headlines that have been dominating CyberPunk today is kind of the performance on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is the less than spectacular performance that it's having, and having it on Stadia kind of bypasses all that. This was to me, this was kind of a good use case of Stadia to see of streaming games, to see, I don't have a new generation console yet, and knowing that the performance on the older ones would be probably a struggle. I was very curious to see how Stadia would stack up, and if, investing $60 to purchase a game and not having to spend $500 to get a system allows for somebody to dive in pretty quickly into that game as well.
Do you not feel comfortable giving any impressions of like the initial tutorial or anything like that?
Oh yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think I was thinking about this last night while playing it, like how I'm going to talk about it, because it's only been an hour, so I don't really know a lot. I spent a lot of time kind of in dialogue. Combat seems okay for right now, but again, I haven't unlocked a whole lot of skills or weapons and gear and things like that.
But you got some combat within the first hour.
Yeah, I got some combat. It was fine. I think the reason that I know that I'm going to keep coming back to it is the world building that it does. Like, it sets a whole lot out in front of you and just kind of allows you to explore. Like, you could certainly main path it, but I think I spent just as much time kind of wandering around, basically living in the world, than I did kind of trying to stay on the game's path. And I think that's to the game's credit, right? Like they have tried to create an environment where this is a living space where people, where you can dive into and really role play, right? This is based on a classic pen and paper, and so it to me it captures that in that sense, that I wanted to role play with it. Like, I wanted to be that character. I wanted to engage with that world, and that to me made that first hour successful. Like, okay, it's got enough of a hook there that I'm willing to keep coming back to it for a while to see how it plays out.
So
it's good to go ahead, August, please.
So when you say keep coming back to it, you're planning on keeping coming back to it beyond your 30-day trial on Stadia?
So I purchased the game, right? This was not a this is the difference of Stadia, is that since I purchased it, even once if I decide not to be a Stadia Pro member, I still own the game and can still play it in 1080. I won't have 4K streaming, but I'll still own it and can still come back to it. And so this was kind of the piece that I don't know that I would say that sold me on Stadia, but it sold me on giving it a shot. Is that it wasn't a subscription? I think right now, having both Stadia and Luna, and kind of jumping back between them, one of the challenges that I see with Luna, at least at this point, is you're either an Amazon Luna subscriber, which gives you a smaller Game Pass like platform with a number of games to kind of jump in and out of that rotate through, or to be an Ubisoft Plus member. There's no ability at this point to buy individuals, so you can just subscribe to channels. Where with Stadia, I don't know that the channel offerings are enough to get me to pay $10, but at this point, if I don't own a new generation console, that if I was going to purchase a game anyways, this is a way to do so and keep playing. So that's where I feel like that's the key coming back to. Like, I own the game. Like, as long as Stadia servers are up, I've got the ability to kind of keep rolling with it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. The different business models are kind of panning out, and proof of life, so to speak, as each of us, goes at, determines an approach to consume from each of those different platforms. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it'll be. I'm sure that when we return in 2021, you'll have a lot more deeper impressions on the actual game itself. But it is nice to be able to hear like a direct comparison between Stadia and Luna. All right, so that was new releases. PickZ PlayZ. One.
Maryland now.
I might be impressed if you get some metal in there. Okay. When SwissGuard hosts, it has to be metal.
Okay,
for the segue.
I'll try better. I'll try to do better. Their soundboards are pretty random, so but I'll try and pre-stage next time.
But yes, this is a festival atmosphere where we all come together and around the ribbon pole or whatever that thing was that people danced around and whatnot. Shared a similar experience. So, and our similar experience for PickZ PlayZ is that now that we're closing in on the end of the year, we'll look back on our backlogs and see, is there anything from 2020 that we missed that we wanted to get in before, next week is our 4th annual Superlatives show, and just take a look. Or maybe take a second look at one of the top games of 2020 and kind of finalize our impressions. So we have 4 different games. Each of us chose something unique. And we'll start with the Gasicles on a PlayStation 5 title, the Pathless.
Yeah, so I guess one of the regrets of the assignment is I didn't, originally when I was thinking of it, I was like, well, I'll definitely hit like one of the like really kind of obvious titles, right? That have been in the zeitgeist this year that I haven't played. So like Watch Dogs Legion or Valhalla or something else. And instead, what I did was kind of move down the road on picking something that was in the launch window of the PlayStation 5 to have an opportunity to test that out and also play something that was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. That being said, all that I really did was reinforce the fact that it was outside of my comfort zone. I mean, it's a good game. The Pathless is definitely interesting. It has certain design elements that, as I'm getting older, I just am becoming less tolerant of. And one of the things is this game is a lot like Super Mario Odyssey in terms of it drops you in a pathfinding set piece puzzle that is 360 degrees wide, right? So the path forward can be in any direction. And unlike Super Mario, I feel like, and I mean, it may be that there are just elements that I haven't figured out. It feels like there's a lot less guidance on, how to proceed forward. So, And again, not saying that that's a bad game. That's just a game that's not a great fit for me. So, the end result is you spend a lot of time wandering around the environment trying to figure out which is the way forward. And once I find a path, getting through the puzzle of exactly how to ascend a climb or build up enough momentum to surmount an obstacle is great. Like those moments. It's just that it's got that thing that I try to avoid, that I've talked a lot about this year, which is that idle time. It has a ton of idle time in between, where you're just transiting from one point to the next, or there are so many different points of light kind of out in the horizon, and you head towards one, often to only find out that that's not a way forward, right? Or that you can't surmount or get past that thing yet. You have to go find the other, and so. While I appreciate that the game strives to not be linear, it would have been a radically different experience if the obstacle surmounting was the point of the game, right? If it just told you where to go, and then once you were there, you had to figure out how to surmount that obstacle. That is sufficient fun for me, right? But the transiting, I mean, it's even, my wife and I go through this a lot of the time. I'm like, I don't have fun driving. Like, I drive, right, and I do things to make drives comfortable, but like the simple act of transiting is a very non-rewarding thing for me, right? My objective is to get to where I want to get to so I can reap that reward, and that's kind of what the Pathless is in a box. It's a lot of transiting and figuring out which direction, and I don't find that appealing. Game looks beautiful. I don't necessarily know if it's got ray tracing and all of the things, but it is a PlayStation 5 title. And there's even in that transiting, there's a bit of a design hook just in terms of like you fire your arrow at markers, and that fills up like a sprint stamina, and you can kind of keep that going and increase your speed as you fire at more markers, and so that kinematic, that motion motion mode is interesting. It also gets very boring, like after like the first 30 minutes or so. It's like neat, and that's great, but it's the utilization of that mode of mobility that is really interesting. And like I said, you spend a lot of time wandering around and not using it for that purpose.
It's kind of shocking to hear that you don't like driving. That this coming from E2KG's resident racing gamer, but I was curious if I saw you. You're like threatening me right there with the soundboard now.
No. No, it's yeah, it's like racing is the thing in and of itself, right? That thing, the transit is the point of the thing, right? But the simple, transition from point A to point B isn't interesting in and of itself, right? And I would say that the Pathless, like philosophically, one of the design elements of the very ethos of it is that it's the whole thing of like, well, the journey is half like the thing, and I'm like, for some things that applies, right? in life, I feel that too, right? It's not what you are at the end, it's what you learn in between, and that's great. But I just feel like the percentage load of how much of the game is wrapped around from a design perspective, the amount of time that you spend in transit, and again, great, kind of like Mirror's Edge, right? There's some beauty and flow, and experience of like just the motion, right? But again, the differences in Mirror's Edge is, right, there's beauty in that flow of motion, but you're constantly surmounting obstacles, right? And that is the thing that's interesting. It's not how gorgeous you look in between, right? That's good too, but it's the fact that you're figuring something out on the way.
No, I understand you. The other, like, the real question I had was the DualSense controller. Does it make? I know you were excited about that once you actually experienced it for the first time. Does the Pathless make good use of that, or have you seen it better utilized in other PlayStation 5 games?
I would say better utilized in other PlayStation 5 games. Quite honestly, I don't know that it has any DualSense implementations in the game package. Maybe it probably does. It maybe just kind of fell flat with me. I would say, definitely much more interested in what that controller and that technology does when I'm playing Black Ops Cold War, right? Because each weapon feels different, and there's trigger pull, and there's feedback, and like it just changes the way you play the game. I would contend, you know, and we'll talk about Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War a little later. I would contend that any player in that game that's using a DualSense controller and is on a PlayStation 5 is at an advantage over a PlayStation 4 or Xbox player, you know, using a controller without that technology in it. So no, it didn't have any. There's nothing from that particular vector that really, you know, took a shine to me with regards to the Pathless.
So all the stuff you're talking about regarding Pathless feels to me very similar to Giant Squid's last game. So Giant Squid's the developer. Their last game was Abzu, the kind of underwater exploration. You know, your statement about the journey being the endeavor, right? Like not the destination, it's the journey. And Abzu was definitely that. Like it was very much about downtime and exploring, and there was a sense of peace and discomfort all at the same time in different pieces.
Yeah.
So I mean, this feels kind of in that same wheelhouse of game design of this small studio, that it's in a little more art housey aspects rather than kind of an exploration platformer action type of game.
Well, and let me ask you guys, because I didn't play them. Does it sound like I'm also describing an experience that is similar to Limbo and Journey?
Sounds closer to Journey than Limbo. I mean, I think Limbo, for the sake of it being a 2D left to right, you know, there's a whole lot less kind of open world exploration there. You know, I found Abzu really interesting. It wasn't something that I saw through to completion. And the way you're describing this feels like a game that I would probably feel the same way about. Like, yeah, I could really appreciate what they're doing. I don't know that it'll resonate with me enough to stick with it. And, you know, because the stick with piece is more than the ambiance, right? The stick with piece to me has to be, what's that gameplay? What's my interaction there? And that part feels, from what you're saying, is less of the focus than the environmental ambiance that it creates.
Yeah, there's just not enough of it. So it's a thing that'll go in the backlog for me, and it'll be a thing that I pick at. You know, I mean, I'm not gonna just. It's not like in that realm of like I'm just not gonna touch that game anymore. It's just it's gonna go in the backlog, relatively high in the backlog because it's a PlayStation 5 specific title, and so that has some cachet for right now. Because there's only so many games that take advantage of the PlayStation 5 technology, so that'll keep it on the, you know, on the radar, in the windshield for, you know, a brief period of time, you know, right now. But it's just one of those things that, you know, as I went through it, I kind of put it in that same place that I would put like a fighting game, which is I enjoy it for maybe about an hour at a time, and then I'm ready to, you know, move on to something else.
So this is also on Epic, the Epic Game Store, so it's on PC. But it's also in Apple Arcade. I saw it there. Do you think it would hold up in a mobile version of it? I mean,
yeah, and I mean it's on Android as well too. I think gameplay implementation wise, it'll kind of be the same. It might actually lend itself pretty decent to motion controls. But for me, I mean, almost all of mobile gaming is in that same category, right? I have fun with it, unless it's like a Fortnite. You know, I have fun with it for about an hour, and then, you know, I'm ready to move on to something else.
All right, I think we'll pull Prime into the conversation and get his impressions of Yakuza 0 on the Xbox One.
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to this one. This one, it's just kind of a goofy game to me because, you know, you're this, you know, this henchman. Well, I'll just say you're a henchman in the Yakuza at the start, and, you know, you're this tough guy, you know, kind of, you know, strong and silentish, more or less. I mean, you kind of have to talk because, you know, you're going through the story, but then, you know, I'm going into clubs and dancing, and I'm helping out this basically, it's like a boy band, basically telling them how to be tough because they're not really tough guys. They're, you know, they're just pretending to be tough gang, you know, biker gang dudes. So it's just like a weird game that I wanted to get back to, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. So this is, I can't remember what this was a remake of originally, what system it was on, but you can kind of tell, like, just on kind of the layout of the city. This is kind of an older, like kind of a, you know, an older game, a remake of an older game, because it's, even though it's fairly biggish. You know, there'll be spots like where you can run off. You see like a street, like see the cars going by, and you kind of try to go off that way, and it kind of just pushes you back, or it says, "Hey, do you want to travel?" To this area or anything like that. So it's not open world, but just kind of a big area that you can play in. So in that respect, you can kind of see the old gameplay or the old game design in there. So, but I have a lot of fun with it.
It was originally on PlayStation 3.
Okay, I knew it was an older one.
March 2015. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could see that design, and the older design in there. But I mean, it looks really good. Obviously, this is a remake, so they've upped the graphics and did all that. But yeah, it plays great. This one, since it's an older game, I know the newer one, that's more of a turn-based kind of action game, or at least I think most of it is in the major battles, from what I've seen. This is just straight up. You can control your character when you're doing the fight during the fight parts. So I mean, that kind of turns me off on the newer one, but I might still give it a try eventually. But I'm having a lot of fun with here. And then you can build up your fighting styles and do not really. There's not really like a rank up tree. You just kind of learn stuff as you if you want to go to like the one guy's like I don't know, like a street like fighting coach or something. So you can go to him or some of his not peers, but some of his students and stuff, and learn stuff from him. But you just learn it, and then that's it. You know it, so you don't have to like power stuff up. So that's nice. There's not a whole lot of that. Like I said, like RPG stuff. So it's kind of nice that I don't have to. I did play a little bit of CyberPunk, and kind of looking through those menus, it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff you can kind of like fool around with, and add to your like armor and add to these attributes and stuff like that. So that's going to be something that's going to actually take time. And this one is just like straight up, okay, I learned something, I'm going to go beat up these dudes now. And you can switch between different fighting styles, which I thought was kind of interesting too. There's like I just learned one where he's like kind of, the other ones were kind of, the one was a kind of just a normal like hey, I'm going to beat up dudes. There's one where he's kind of super quick. Now there's one where he's like more powerful, and and even like the different stances you get between these styles is kind of nice. Like he's all puffed up, he's like going like this, like he's a monster. So I think that's what even the style is called, like monster style or something like that. So it's just kind of cool to jump between those styles now.
So you have to, is that kind of something between fights that you have to do, or can you just like switch on the fly in the middle of combat from one style to another?
No, yeah, you can do that on the fly. So that's kind of nice. So, and you can kind of tell, like, like I had to, go against I'm just going against one big dude. I was like, okay, I have to use the, the monster style on that one, because there's no way. I might be able to do it on one of the other styles, but it's probably gonna take me a lot longer. And then with the monster style, I think it's only with the monster style where you can actually pick up stuff and use the environment to your advantage. So there's like a motorcycle stand there. I just picked it up and started wailing on guys with it and just breaking apart as I'm hitting the dudes. So it's actually pretty cool. It's kind of cool. It kind of turns into like an old brawler at that point, where you can just pick up boxes, or there's like traffic cones, or like I said, like a motorcycle there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting aspects of gameplay with Yakuza 0 is that ability to, hey, this fight isn't going well, let me switch modes or styles or stances or whatever.
Yeah. Which I didn't even expect. Like I didn't even think that would be an option or anything like that. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun with it.
Is the story enough to keep you going, or is it just strictly a gameplay thing for you? Because you seem like you the story sounded amusing, but you've been waxing poetic about the combat.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of generic story, and maybe it's just because I've seen like so many like those type of movies and stuff where it's, I don't want to give anything away, but I mean, I guess kind of, not really revenge, kind of revenge for yourself is all I'm going to say. So, but like I said, I've seen this story like many a times, so it's not a huge big deal. I mean, the characters though, they're interesting. Like the people you talk with and you interact with, and like the one Yakuza boss was, he was pretty cool. You actually had to fight him, which was kind of interesting since he's like an older guy. But I did end up beating him. But it's just the characters too are part of it, and not so much the story, I think, for me, and the gameplay. So it's going to keep me going with it. Just the wackiness.
And a lot of it is very. A lot of it is very much like watching the Office or Schitt's Creek. It's very eye rolly and awkward sometimes, and You're just kind of like the characters say a line and you just kind of roll your eyes and you're just ready to go on to like the next thing, right? Like the movements are the character movements and transitions from like one set piece to the next are interesting, but like the 15 minutes spent talking about noodles, right? Just like I'm like, okay.
Move on. I guess the other thing too, like I said, you're this kind of tough guy, but then you're sitting there helping just random innocent people that you'd probably be shaking down, for money, and any other day, you're helping them out with like a gang, people are getting robbed or whatever, or some other group is trying to shake them down, but you're helping them out. So I was like, it's kind of weird, but maybe that kind of plays out more later in the story. So I don't know. I'd have to see.
All right, cool.
Can I jump in here? Prime, you mentioned that you played a little bit of CyberPunk and you were coming in and out during that time. So is there anything that you wanted to add about CyberPunk or differences if you've had a chance to play it a little bit further than I did?
No, I've only played, well, probably until like 45 minutes, but really only half hour because it took me like 15 minutes to do the character creator thing, because I like to go through that pretty, it's not as detailed as say like Skyrim. Like Skyrim, you can actually like when you pick like the nose, the eyes, and say maybe the chest, you can actually like physically like deform all those areas. And this one is just like straight up here. Okay, this is what my chest is looking like. This is what my chin's gonna look like in Cyberpunk. So it's a little bit more straightforward. So like Skyrim, I think I took like a half hour, 45 minutes because I actually like delved deep into that. But yeah, this one is I unfortunately haven't played that much. So kind of like you all have more to talk about, come the next year.
Well, I think I've seen articles saying that devs that they've been looking at the telemetry and the number of players who actually use that kind of stuff is very small, and so it's much more become the pick and pack, switch apart kind of approach to character generation. Same thing on simulations, by the way. Back in the Forza days where you could like, in Need for Speed days where you could like deform and shape stickers and all that, like a lot of that you'll see in games has gone away, and now it's just like you pick the sticker and you can resize it. But one of the things I wanted to ask is what platform are you playing it on?
Xbox. I actually played it on my S and my X, and it definitely looks a lot better on my X. So, okay. And it seemed to run fine on my S, but it was kind of like the Switch syndrome, where it's kind of like everything is kind of a little blurry or washed out in certain areas, like especially if you get like really close to somebody or something. So you can definitely see the breakdown there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to when and if I get to play it on the Series X to see how much better it is, even between just the X. So maybe one day.
One day soon.
Hopefully one day soon.
DB actually broke out the Oculus Rift for a game.
Yeah, my son had picked up a Rift over the summer, so I've had a chance to kind of play around with a number of things. And I played a very little bit of Half-Life Alyx back when he got it this summer and kind of set it down. And so that's why I wanted to come back to it this summer, or for this assignment. The Half-Life Alyx won Best VR Game at the Game Awards tonight. And it is, again, have not spent a lot of time, but it's fun. I mean, it does VR very well. There is a physicality to it. And this is from somebody who played the original Half-Life, in a dark basement and can remember jumping as a head crab launched at him, right? So I'm coming into this with a little contextual knowledge of the series, and also an awareness that my capacity for jump scares is real. And I had a few of those. They're definitely a little more jump scary in VR than they are in running whatever I was running at the time on a 1999 PC. I'm going to guess it was a Gateway something. But so the physicality aspect is really what sticks out to me as I've kind of had a chance to dive in a little bit further. Is oftentimes in a VR game, when you have a weapon, you'll have certain spots on your body where you can grab that weapon or grab the clip to reload. There's a sense of if I've put it here on my body, it's still there and I can grab it. Or if I've put it in a bucket to carry around, it's still in the bucket and I can grab it back out. That it is easy to, back like I said before about CyberPunk, it's easy to lose yourself in the world, but in Half-Life Alyx, because it's in VR, it's a much more immersive experience there. So have not played enough to know kind of where it takes the story yet, but it definitely is. It's I've played a good handful of VR games this year. Half-Life Alyx and Iron Man VR are two of the experiences that I've enjoyed the most because they've kind of transported me into those characters. So it is successful in doing that.
Excellent. All right, I think I'll go ahead and finish off this segment. I played Paper Mario: The Origami King on the Nintendo Switch, and this was actually a pretty popular game for the rest of my family that played it earlier, probably right after it came out in the summer. But I just finally got around to starting it, and I actually am enjoying it a lot. I didn't have the highest of expectations. I know that DBU and Prime both played it earlier this year, and I may be mistaken, but I recall you guys liking it but not being blown away by it. And so maybe my expectations were lower than they should have been. But I'm enjoying the world, I'm enjoying the characters, and I'm enjoying the humor quite a bit. The battle system, I think, leaves something to be desired. And I can see that like there's like a pitch meeting or something where they're like, we're gonna do this different thing where you have to like do kind of like a lot puzzle type thing, and arrange the bad guys before you attack them. But it hasn't been fun for me to do it. I don't think it adds anything, and to be honest, it almost feels like it takes away a little bit. I don't feel like I get to really put my own spin on the battles or develop my own style. It's just a very like these are the Goombas here. You have to fight them in this way. Period. Just do it. Get them in that position so you can fight them. And
yeah, I think because the battles end up being kind of spatial puzzles, that it often feels like you're trying to find that one correct answer rather than thinking about a battle strategy and what tactics or items or buffs or debuffs or that type of aspect. It very much becomes, oh, I solved the puzzle, I guess I gotta wait for the attack to play out, right? It'd be, in some ways, I don't mind the puzzles, but it would be nice to be able to skip the action stuff at that point because it doesn't feel engaging.
Right, and they have a little bit of, if you do the button timing properly, you get bonus hits and everything, but it's kind of discordant with the rest of it, because the rest of it is like they're doing an excellent job, I think, of developing the world. I really enjoy the humor. I really enjoy going around talking to the toads and everything, and the various citizens of the Mushroom Kingdom. But then you go into so like that's very RPG-esque. Right? I mean, that's an RPG, right? And then you go into the battle, and I don't feel like I'm role playing in the battle anymore. It's a little bit frustrating. But yeah, like it was. I'm definitely gonna keep going with it just for the story aspect of it. The colors are vibrant. I like the design. I'll start off like when you first go up. Mario and Luigi are driving up in like the little Mario Kart to the castle, and like he drops Mario off and he goes, "You go on in, Mario. I'm gonna go park this. I don't want to pay the valet." And it's just like I feel like this is a game, like obviously kids can play it, it's a Mario game, but I feel like it's, as a parent, I feel like playing this game is how parents feel when you watch like kids shows that are especially well written, where the humor works for like the kids have their level of humor, but they also have like the winks and the nods towards the parents without it being explicit. And I just I appreciate that, and kudos to the team at Intelligent Systems for that. All right, so we're now into the round robin segment.
This might be a long one.
So that's a piano version of Final Fantasy battle music?
I believe so.
That's,
Yes.
that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, I feel like I'm in a Final Fantasy battle, a boss battle, waiting for my ATB gauge to recharge. So
Also cultured now all of a sudden.
Da, 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 da.
now I'm like all nostalgia. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. Agasicles, you have the honor of discussing your first round robin game, and we're gonna go back to the virtual reality. This is like, I don't know how many episodes of Eat 2KG can say sport multiple VR titles, but this one does. You played VTOL VR, vertical takeoff and lift, and how was it?
Yeah. So first I'll open with a question. So DBQ, when kid picked up a Oculus Rift S over the summer, or an original Oculus Rift?
S.
Yes.
The
Okay.
current version. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So same platform. So DB broke his out. I broke mine out as well. It's sitting right over there. Yeah, and I won't unpack the whole thing because I wrote a rather lengthy post on Twitter about the state of VR and kind of where I felt it needed to go, and the things that I've kind of through self-discovery have figured out about myself. And one of those things is like I don't. I think we all know that I like flight sims, racing sims, games where you're driving any type of mechanized thing. So mech games are cool as well. And what I found that I really like is I like using VR as an extension of those. I really tried hard. I originally had Half-Life Alyx on my list as well, and I really tried hard to decide to approach that game. And I just was like, I just don't like. I'm not into VR experiences for VR experience's sake. Beat Saber was up high on my list as well. And I was like, no, I just want to play the flight sims and driving games that are already in my wheelhouse, and then if I can do VR with them, then that's great. One of the things that I really enjoyed playing a lot last year, and I want to get back to, is the spiritual successor for Descent 3. I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's a PC game, that was made that is essentially plays a lot like Descent 3, is kind of in that same kind of design ethos. And it has a VR component, and that's like awesome, right? But this VTOL VR, vertical takeoff and landing VR, is a neat little game. The one weird shtick with it is, and I read a little bit of what the developer posted about it. What he posted, and this is true of games in this genre, is one of the barriers to entry is you spend your money on your VR set, you spend your money on your high-end PC, you spend your money buying one of these games, you sit down to play it, and the first thing it tells you is you need a flight control system. Well, that's another like $200+, right, to get a joystick and a throttle, a HOTAS. And so he's designed this game so that I mean, quite honestly, the game doesn't support joysticks at all. The only way you can use joysticks is to actually go off script and go pull a plug-in, which really requires you to pull in a plug-in manager. And I've pulled both of those things in, but right now I'm just playing the game without it. And so let me tell you, like, if you think you can experience vertigo in VR, experience vertigo in VR in an aircraft that vertically takes off, that you're manually trying to hover without, because I did it manually without the assistance of the autopilot later, where you're controlling it with the, essentially what I call the Wiimotes, right? And there's no physical, like, rubber banding, like, feedback. on where the joystick is. You're doing it all visually, and you're looking at the HUD and flying by instruments, and so it's a different experience. It kind of uses voxel art kind of graphics, so it's a little kind of Minecraft looking. If you guys remember, I talked about a game I think last year. Again, I can't recall the name right off the top of my head, but called like Sky Fight or something like that. That again was kind of a voxely type of graphics, which reduces the overhead right on the design effort that has to go into building the game. And then has allowed the implementation of flight sims without super huge large development teams. So. But the game's pretty neat. The biggest thing that I also found out about it is I complained a lot last year about how the gaming media was trying to get everybody lathered up, had been getting everybody lathered up about VR for the last several years, and it was still buggy and unstable as all get out, even through last year. But this year, with all the patches and the drivers and stuff, like I hooked the Oculus Rift S up. It installed. It didn't give me any problems. It didn't have any problems, recognizing the controllers. It didn't have any problems with the keep out zone. The biggest problem with the Rift S that I found last year was the constant resetting that was needed on orientation, and how that often didn't work. And so, when I'm playing Project Cars, I try and reset the view because I move my seat an inch, and it, when I come out of the reset view screen, all of a sudden I'm like sitting on the nose of the car, right? And there's no way to get it back to the way it's supposed to be. So those problems are there in VR, but it's much easier to get back to a steady state and pick up and play the game. So the game itself is really awesome. It allows you to sit in the cockpit and use the wand controllers to actually interface with the physical control surfaces on the plane. So you actually can flip up the safety switch on the master arm, switch, flip the master arm switch up, flip the safety cap back down, and you can interact with all the multifunction displays and put them in the modes that they need to be in. So it's pretty awesome, pretty awesomely immersive.
Every time I hear about games like this, I can't get past, like, and this might just be because I've not played like an Oculus Rift or anything like that, but I can't get past the fact that there's no tangible feedback when you push a button or something. And so I was kind of expecting you to say it felt sloppy when you were trying to do stuff.
It's a thing in VR, and this is what frustrates me so much that the media doesn't talk about it. It's a problem, right? When you talk about playing another flight sim or a racing game, with wheel and pedals or whatever, I mean, I have Digital Combat Simulator as well, and the guy's right. I mean, natively I feel like I prefer a joystick and a throttle, but the guy's right. He's like, you put the headset on, you can't see anything, and the first thing the whole control layout is based on keyboard, right? So here you are, like lifting the visor up, looking out like the little bottom thing with one eye, like trying to see where the heck the control surface is on the keyboard. And it's hard enough playing a really complex flight sim, mapping all the controls in the first place, because they're not, I've never gotten onto a flight sim where I feel like the keyboard is laid out like logically, like, or the way that I want to do it. So without the physical feedback, I mean, the physical feedback is a problem, but I mean, in VR, it's always a problem. Let me go down this path and try and make it really quick. We've all had the problem where you play Madden and you have the controller and you hit the circle move button or the spin move button or something, and like your guy on screen doesn't do it. So there's a momentary disconnect. You go, why the heck didn't the guy on the screen do the thing that I told it to do? And so there's always this Madden shadow input syndrome, right, that we've all experienced for decades. Then you go to the Wiimotes, right, which to me are like the predecessors technologically of like the hand remotes for the VR headsets, right? That's where I feel like that, in motion controls and all that stuff. The problem with motion controls is the same feedback thing that you're talking about, Swiss, right? Which is that I have to use these things to interact with the screen. When something doesn't happen that I expect to happen, I don't know if it didn't happen because of a glitch or a tech problem, but there's a disconnect because I don't have a direct line of feedback. And it creates a problem because I start to learn an inherent distrust of motion controls, which I feel like has always been the problem with motion controls. Don't take my joypad away because it's what I'm accustomed to, and now you got me playing Madden with motion controls, and I have even less trust that the input that I provided, right, happens. That is the problem with VR, is like, as you mentioned, it's I'm supposed to trust that I'm waving the wands and it's doing the thing, but when the thing that I expect to happen doesn't happen, I now just learn an inherent distrust for that motion control, which again goes back to all of like, our engineering experience of like why human beings tend to not trust like touch screens, right? Because give me a button because I know that the button's mechanical and it actually provides the input, right, that I expect it to have. So yeah, it's a problem in VR, and like I said, a lot of media journalists don't talk about it, but like it is a substantive, tangible barrier to, if you can't contend with that, then you're like VR is just not going to be for you.
All right, DB, you referenced playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla earlier in your Phoenix Rising discussion. How much time did you put into that? I know it's on the Luna. You have it on the Luna platform, so you may not have been able to really descend into it very much.
Yeah, I only played maybe about an hour, a little over an hour and a half, I think the clock says on it. So you get through kind of the opening and the first kind of area and to your first kind of hub space. It is. It's a game that I know that I'm going to pick up at some point in time when it's on sale. Because I think the world that it throws you into, it does a really good job of immersing you into that. It throws you smack dab in Vikings culture right away. And I guess because you've played some of this as well, so feel free to jump in at any point in time. It is. It feels, I can tell that it's the Origins developers and not the Odyssey group. It's going back to the combat conversations we were having from Odyssey and Origins. It certainly feels closer to that. There's definitely a little more weight to it, which makes sense because you're wielding heavier items. You've got a shield, which makes it's valuable within combat. But it also feels incredibly comfortable and samey at the same time. Like going back to the new coat of paint discussion about Immortals, I think part of the reason Immortals feels different and doesn't feel like a coat of paint is because it takes it and puts it in a whole different space and has creative freedom to do anything, where Assassin's Creed feels very much like Assassin's Creed. And I say this as somebody who sunk 120 some hours into Odyssey, right? That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It can be a very enjoyable experience, but it also is pretty much what it is. There are some differences, right? Like your bird aspect that you had for the last couple of games, where you can kind of get an eagle eye view and fly over, and it would normally mark things. It doesn't mark things. You can't mark enemies as you would before. So you're not able to kind of have a HUD display that gives you an icon from somebody walking behind a wall so that you know that they're there. In some ways, that actually makes the stealth, to me, it made the stealth, at least in the early part of the game, a little more maybe difficult, but also a little more understandably realistic as well, right? You don't have some like godlike power that you can identify everybody in your 50-foot radius type of thing. It really forced me at least to listen more in terms of where people are at and to have a better awareness on the map of where those enemies were and what their patrol routes were, because I wasn't able to just kind of have a HUD icon helping me keep track of that. So, but it captures Vikings world pretty well. I mean, right? Like I don't know enough about the Vikings world to say how accurate it is, but it definitely immerses you in that experience. I find in some ways, it also I feel so spoiled in saying this, right? Like, I loved Cassandra as a character. I found her easily identifiable, likable. She had this kind of puckish rogue aspect to her where she was a mercenary, but she also had you could play her as a soft character side. And initially, your character that you get here has a lot more rough edges to her or him, depending on how you play than either Alexios or Cassandra did in Odyssey. And so there's some differences there, certainly. And so it's where I want to spend more time to feel out if this is me coming down off of the high of Odyssey, or if it is something that I just need to spend more time with and accept the differences and start to feel those systems as they are and appreciate them for what they are. How far? I mean, how does that ring for you, Agastocles, in terms of your experience with Valhalla?
My Valhalla experience is about like yours, and Prime's is on CyberPunk. And I've even played probably less than 45 minutes. Like, I just sincerely booted the game up to see what it looked like on the Series S, and that was pretty much about it.
And it looked good?
It looked fine. I didn't have it connected to. I don't think I've played it connected to a 4K 60 TV yet. It was connected to I was looking at a 1080p, non HDR display. So the game, as is the case with Ubisoft, right? All their games look fine, right? So a lot of the internet angst about like how the SS, whatever. I think people are overly wrought about a very minor, different shades of differences between the console versions. So. But yeah, the game, it's got that wonderful fluidity to it that it's always had. Nice, lovely touches on the mechanics, and how you operate with, not only in the combat style, but just in the way you move around the world. So yeah, I mean, it again, like DBQ said, definitely something that I want to dig into, and play some more when there's a little more quiet time. It's always a weird dynamic with us that kind of after we get through the superlative shows is when we'll actually have more time to dig into some of these games. So
yeah. Well, this might be completely the opposite direction. It's looks like a very pick up and play type thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but Human Fall Flat Prime, what's that all about?
Excuse me. So this was another one of those games that I have heard about. I've seen it everywhere, but I didn't really know what was it about or what was going on until I saw one of my sons. He was watching somebody or watching like a YouTuber or one of those streams playing it, and it's basically just like a physics puzzle gamer. So you're this kind of like humanoidish blob dude, and you have to. There's like an exit or a doorway that you have to get through, but you have to do like some kind of puzzle within this little area that you get dropped into. So kind of like I forgot what that was called now. Reliable delivery service, I believe it was called, that I also played. You kind of control with your arms. You have like to grab, and then you can like put your arms up, or one at a time, depending on what you need to do. And you kind of when you push boxes around, or you got to open a door, or there was one where there's like kind of like train cars on the level that you're on, and there's like so the train car is on one end, there's another cliff on the opposite side, and there's kind of like these poles like in between. I'm like, what? And I didn't realize what I was supposed to do, so I was like, what am I supposed to do here? So eventually you kind of get like hints too, and you can kind of bring them up if you get stuck on something. And there's like question marks sometimes you can go and look at, and it'll tell you, kind of give you a clue what you do. So you have to like grab the pole and like pull yourself when you're on top of the rail car, and it actually moves the rail car. So you just got to kind of keep doing that until you get toward that cliff, and then you can jump on it. So it's kind of like different puzzles like that. It's kind of a fun, goofy game. So I've only played it single player so far. It's definitely something that you definitely want to play. Like multiplayer, I think would be a good time with either my son or my wife. I'll definitely have to try it out.
It looks like it has like up to 8 players, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think when he was watching it, there was like 4 at the most. So I don't know if you can go more than that, maybe. But And even when I was playing, like has right there on the screen, press a button to for the second player. So I think they encourage you to do this multiplayer. So, but unfortunately, like I said, I haven't had a chance to do that yet. But yeah, it's a fun like little puzzle game and just kind of jump in there and try to figure things out. A little bit of platforming too that I was kind of jumping in between like floating platforms and stuff like that. But it's pretty cool, just a kind of a chill game, which I kind of gravitate toward lately. So it's nice.
All right, I beyond Mario Origami King, I also picked up another 2020 title, Panzer Corps 2, which I only heard about because Agasicles talked about it back in the spring or early summer, and it got me excited because I like these war strategy type games. I'm gonna keep playing it. It was I don't know if my memory from like a Gasicles review is was confused or whatever, but I was expecting more of like a tactical game, and I feel it doesn't feel as tactical as I thought it would be. It feels a little bit more like the combat in like a Civilization type game because you have like the units on the map and you're moving them around, but I don't know. I haven't got that little click yet where I feel like I'm a Panzer general. And I've won some of the I did the tutorial and I've won some of the battles in initial scenarios, but I don't really feel like I've done so because I've like really outthought the enemy. It was just set up for me to be able to do it with like the weak tactics of they just kind of waited for me to slaughter them type thing. There's a little bit where you can kind of maneuver around and get a little bit of bonuses, and I'm wondering as the scenarios get more difficult if that's going to come into play. There's definitely a lot of different types of units and they have their different strengths and weaknesses. I kind of like that. I've already gravitated toward using my fighters and bombers a little bit, but yeah, I think it's still a little bit early for me to like make a call on how I feel about it, but I've enjoyed it. I haven't enjoyed it as much as I thought I would. It hasn't really scratched that tactical itch for me yet.
So are you playing the campaign?
I did the tutorial and I started the I played a little bit of the North Africa campaign and then I just started the North Poland campaign.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the difference. I think I immediately, and this is not unusual for it to be my approach to RTSs. I tend to not like the campaigns because they always handicap you kind of arbitrarily. Like all the scenarios are in an RTS campaign are typically, here's the 12 tools, here are the 3 we're taking away for this scenario. And then rinse and repeat, put you in the next scenario. Let me take away 3 different tools. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. So I'm pretty sure, I'll have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure I immediately went into the skirmish mode where you can build the scenarios the way you want each time. And I'm pretty sure that's what I did. I think you still pick maps that are based on like classic assaults or whatever, but I don't think I played through where you're locked into certain paradigms, so that might be the difference. And I want to say, I think, can't you tailor the game in settings in terms of like when I can't remember if is that a game that pauses and you have control over that? Or is it in real time all the time?
It's turn-based. It's straight up turn-based,
Okay.
so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I will add that the campaign, like between campaigns, you have your core army and your core units, and they carry over. So if you get beat up in the first battle, you have to spend money or whatever to heal your units and get like replacements and whatnot between the battles, and they gain experience in heroes. But I haven't gotten far enough into it yet to really see how the heroes affect things. But I wanted some like combined arms, like Blitzkrieg feeling, and I feel like I feel like I'm playing Civilization, and I wanted a little bit of a heavier strategy. So we'll see if I'll try the skirmishes and I'll try to get deeper in the campaign, and we'll see if my opinion changes. I think the last game that we're going to talk about before we wrap up tonight is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. And both Prime and Agasicles have been playing it recently. Prime on the Xbox One and Agasicles on the PS5. And I think I'll start with Agasicles because you did mention earlier tonight that you thought you have a competitive advantage now with the DualSense.
Yeah, and I guess where I'll start off is it a topic that combines that converges that with the topic of the most recent patch. So, Prime, did you pull this down? It's like a 25 gigabyte patch that just dropped
Is
like
that was for this week?
Yes, it just dropped like yesterday, I want to say.
I downloaded. I had a chance to play it yet though.
Okay,
Play through it.
So they're about to roll into their first post-launch season, which I think starts on December 16th. So in the next week or so.
Yes.
And so the patch changes a lot of the face of the game in order to pre-stage for that event. So it's a little problematic because a lot of it just feels arbitrary. In that like they've changed the UI, they've changed how you get into multiplayer mode, and I'm like, why did we do that? They've changed buttons like for how you navigate around the screen for whatever reason. And so just to talk about the paradigm a little bit, there's a whole like chicken dance that you do if you're like me, where I play free for all. After every free for all match, you typically get some type of unlock, a camo or a weapon component or something. I am the type of person that I don't stick with the group that I've been randomized with in the lobby. I always back out of the lobby, go in and manage my inventory and swap parts and stuff, and then go into a new free for all match with different players. So there's a whole thing that you do of like you the after action ends, you see your rewards on the screen, you come back to the lobby, you exit out of the lobby, you go to the loadout screen, you manage your inventory, you back out from that loadout screen, which is about 2 or 3 UI levels, shift back over to the lobby entry screen, and then hit the button to and so there's different steps in that are the X button or the circle button, and for whatever reason they changed the mapping on those, and I'm like, why? Like, and so more importantly, and this is the big thing that I had a problem with because it was a surprise, is when you get this patch, I'm pretty sure that it resets all of your settings back down to the defaults. So your field of view, on the newer consoles where you can manage your field of view like you can on a PC, it reset that. I have mine set at 100, it set it back down to 80. You have to go, and so you have the controls you mentioned, Swiss, with your first question, you have to go in and check those and make sure that those are still set for that DualSense controller the way you had them set, which was, you can adjust horizontal and vertical sensitivity, but the other thing is that where the new enhancements are concerned, you can enable and disable those. And so that's a thing that you have to go in and check. Toggling the force feedback and the vibration and the haptics and all that, those are pretty much off and on. But great Scott, man, the horizontal and vertical sensitivity, like those are very intricate, nuanced, detailed settings, and it reset all those to default. So you have to completely dial your controller back in. Like that's a not insignificant pain. So it's just, I don't get it. I don't know if it's only that way on the PlayStation 5, but very, very frustrating. As far as that friction of entry goes. There are some neat things that they enabled. I will say that looking at the reward screen and then getting into the inventory management screen has been problematic because you look at the reward screen, let's say you get a new barrel, a muzzle, and an optic. When you go into the loadout screen, what they call the class screen for whatever reason, right? It's just a loadout screen. There's no indicator like which of those parts is new, right? So you have to do this whole thing where you're flipping back and forth depending on what your short-term memory is like, of like what new muzzle did I get again? Most of the time there's sequential and you just get the next one down in the list, but not always, right? Because sometimes you have gotten access to a specialized weapon, and so you may have access to the barrel that's at the bottom of the list, but you got a new barrel and it's the fourth one in the list, right? And again, when you just go into that screen, unless you remember what it was from your reward screen, you don't, where. So it's probably so in the new UI, what they've done is they've given you a green pip over what is the new component that you just got, and that's hugely helpful. And it gives you, which again, I'm pretty sure they had on Black Ops 3. But they also give you a green pip over the weapon categories when you've been granted a new weapon in the category. So going through and swapping those things around to try and arm the new stuff you've gotten access to is a little easier.
Yeah, they did that in Modern Warfare also. So I don't know why. Yeah, that's weird. I didn't like that either when I was like going in there. I'm like, and I was expecting it too because it's okay, it's the next Call of Duty. They've done it before, so it's just like what. Then I'm just looking through the whole list. It's like, what's going on? I don't know what's what. So, and that's the same thing for, and it's a little thing, but the same thing for like your banners and like the stickers you can get for like your little profile thing that you can kind of customize to is the same way. So it was just kind of weird. I don't know why they did that, or why. I mean, it's fixed now, I guess, but still.
So the weird thing is, I don't know that they've done the same thing on operators, stickers, and whatever the little decorations are that you hang off chains off the weapons. So
charms. I think they're
charms, yeah. So when fortunately I checked because I had unlocked like 3 or 4 additional operators, right, somewhere between like just before the patch dropped and the patch. And I don't know if they got unlocked by virtue of the patch or whether or not I'd actually earned enough. Like you get no indicator that you've unlocked a new operator. You never get that in your reward screen. You just have to go check to see if those are unlocked, and you don't get a green pip for those. So you still have to kind of wade through that. Same thing on stickers. Somewhere along the way, I think for the longest time, you have the one sticker, the no nuke sticker or something like that. And then like I went, yeah, and then I went back and checked, and there's like 20 something stickers that are unlocked. So as far as I know, they didn't unlock individually and incrementally. There was just some trigger that you hit, and then like everything like unlocked all of a sudden. So but the game's still as fun as it has always been. I'd say the one thing that they've changed that directly impacts gameplay right away is it seems like they dialed back I will call it persistent effectiveness of score streaks. So the biggest deal in the change with Black Ops is that you now when you get a score streak, so let's say the bow, and let's say so you get the bow, and let's say it's normally charged so you can unleash like 5 shots of the bow, and the bow, for people who haven't played Black Ops, is like a fire bow with explosives on it, I think, and so. You can set people get hit, they get set on fire. Even if they kill you, they're still burning and they die like 5 seconds later. So you get the bow. Let's say it has 5 shots. If you get the bow and arm the bow, and that's your score streak, and you get killed, and you haven't fired any shots from the bow, even if you have the bow pulled back, when you respawn, you still have access to that score streak. So no more is the case where you earn enough kills to get a score streak, you get killed, and you never even get to use the thing. So, but the way it was working is you had access to those like 5 shots from the bow, even if it went across like 2 or 3 respawns. But now it seems like they've dialed that back a little to where if you have the score streak unlocked, you get killed and you haven't used it, you'll get 1 respawn and a chance to use it. And then if you get killed a second time, that's it. You're done. You start earning back towards your score streak all over again.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that at first, just because when I was thinking about it when you're talking, but yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, because like I have the minigun as the sentry gun that you can put down, and now that I think about it, yeah, if I die, that thing's still up there and shooting around until it resets. Yeah, so it's kind of and that's definitely different from the past games. It's once you died, it would have just like reset right away, and that's the other thing too. Now you kind of just accrue your score streaks. Like before, if you died, you had to reset, and you had to get those 4 or 5 kills or whatever it was set to at the time. I don't know what the numbers were, but now it's just kind of a gradual thing as you kind of progress through the matches. So, which is, I guess, kind of nice. I guess that's a more kind of noob friendly, if I want to say that term. For people just starting out.
I was gonna say, sounds like COD's gone soft.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, I think that should probably about do it for tonight. We had a lot of games to cover tonight, so we didn't even get to them all, unfortunately. But we got a couple of things that we have to wrap up before we can exit. Next PickZ PlayZ won't be till 2021. As I said, this is the penultimate episode of 2020. But when we do come back, the PickZ PlayZ assignment is with the release of Yakuza Like a Dragon, which Prime was referring to. We once again get a release that allows us to dive deep into a culture that is not entirely well known or well worn for those of us in the West. Take this opportunity to celebrate or peek inside a historical or maybe a different culture from what you're used to, whether that's currently or in the past. And so there's a lot to pick from that's out there. Crusader Kings 3, Valhalla, and Tsushima are of recent note. And beyond that, I think it's very much open for us to, when we have more time, to really dig into like some of these meteor titles. So right now we have Northgard on Switch for Prime, which is an interesting choice. Also with the Norse, DB is planning on continuing Valhalla, and I would like to complete Ghost of Tsushima before we return. Probably won't do that because I don't do things fast. But the most important news, however, is next week's episode. All four of us will be back for our annual special, the 4th annual Gaming Superlative Awards, where we have some different categories than you would probably see in the rest of the gaming media. And we just kind of reminisce about 2020 and compare our top impressions for some of them. Some of them are positive, some of them not so positive, but it's always a lot of fun, and it's always my favorite episode of the year. So I'm really excited about it, and hope we all see you then. Till next time, take care. Goodbye, everyone.